3 billion. So this talks about a big outburst of data. Not that these guys were not working on big data. So for example, if you talk about Google, if you talk about Yahoo, if you talk about Amazon, all these companies were already working on this problem of big data for a very long time because their data was always big. So what should be your definition of big data? So if you are using a laptop which has a processing power of say 1.8 gigahertz, say a RAM of around 16 GB, and it's a Pentium 7 Windows processor, something like that, then obviously any data which is bigger than this cannot be managed in your platform. That's a big data problem for you. But generically, otherwise, we typically talk about the V's of big data. So on screen you can see the 3 V's of big data. We have the 4 V's and we have the 5 V's also. So when you talk about volume in terms of capacity of data storage, it's the volume which defines, the dimension is volume which defines big data. The second dimension which we can talk about is velocity, the speed at which data is coming. Right? So every app you're using an Ola app, you're using an Uber app, your signals are being processed. So when you're doing that, traveling from point A to point B, it shows you where you are going to, right? This data is captured at the server. When they have to process this data, get insights from this data, do reporting based on this data, that's the velocity dimension. That's the pace at which data is coming. The variety would be whether it is structured data, unstructured data, right? Very standard form of data, or something which is half populated. That would be the variety of the data, right? And the rate at which data is generated is basically going with the next dimension, which is the quality of the data, the veracity, which is the fourth dimension of data. So we typically have the 4 V's of the data. Now we are talking about what typically is analytics. You might have heard of a lot of notions like machine learning, analytics, big data, statistical learning, all those things. Typically all of these are basically a different dimension of the same keynote thing, right? So analytics in a nutshell would be called as an amalgamation of statistics, IT, and business domain knowledge so that you can use data to solve a business problem, a problem which stands at the strategic level but is created at the operational layer, right? So that you can solve that problem using data at an operational level and see the effect of that change at the strategic point. That is what analytics would be. Right? So it is basically transformation of data using some scientific methodology so that you can see that, okay, once you start using this technique, are you able to extract from the data an abstraction? An abstraction would be something like Newton saw the apple falling from the tree. Everybody else saw that, but he could abstract that there is a relationship of the apple falling, the gravitational force, and the mass of the apple. And that's where he generalized this, and we are using that as an equation. And that is what analytics is all about. Generalizing, abstracting, making it relatively easy to use it in the next. So now we enter to the world of data scientists. So this is one odd slide which you Google, you will find most of the places, and everybody who's in this market tries to use this slide. So basically it's a 2012 cutting from Harvard Review post which says that this is one of the sexiest jobs, but really speaking, there's a lot of effort which goes in. So it's not just the pay package which you should be looking at, it's also the kind of job, the kind of efforts you need to take to become a data scientist, and typically it takes some time to actually be called as a data scientist. And what I can see in the industry is that there is an exponential growth in the requirement because companies are now adapting to analytics, they're learning about it, and obviously they're trying to adapt, and everybody needs resource. So obviously this is one big pie in the market on which you should jump into. So when you talk about type of analytics, broadly, so I would say that there is prescriptive analytics, there is predictive analytics, there is descriptive analytics. Right? So what would be descriptive analytics? And there is one more thing which is called as inferential, but that's very close between the descriptive and predictive. So I'll just try to sum that up also. The descriptive analytics is related to all those aspects of analytics wherein we try to just describe the data, try to understand what's happening in the data. It's historic, based on the historic data, referencing the historic data to say what your data is saying. On the other hand, when you talk about inferential, it basically talks about if you're given a small set of data, can you use that to infer about the larger data set based on what you have already seen in the smaller sample data set? Right? Then you have predictive analytics, which goes the next step into saying as to how you can use the historical patterns in the data to predict the futuristic outcome based on certain data set. And you also have prescriptive analytics, which is basically an optimization problem, wherein based on your descriptive, your predictive, you could talk about what should happen ideally before the mistake is committed. So say for example, if you're talking about a submarine, right? Can we have a prescriptive analytics module which says that before an accident happens, can it look at data, sensor data, and all those things and say that, okay, this can happen, let's avoid that. And not only avoid that, there is course correction inbuilt in the module itself. So for example, if you see an aircraft, when it is on auto mode as compared to manual mode, by augmenting the data which is coming from all the sensors, it's able to stabilize the plane. Right? That is what prescriptive analytics would be. Going on the next slide. So as I said, how do airlines price the change in the pricing every hour, right? So say you have access to the data which is getting augmented through your portal, through your channel partners, wherein you can see that how many tickets are booked, say T minus 2 months, T minus 1 month, actual T. Basically, I'm talking about going back in data and saying that when the bookings were open and you had 3 months for the flight to take off, how many tickets were booked. So you would obviously see a pattern in the data that airline does charge people who come and book in advance at a low price. People who come almost like 15 days prior to booking their tickets, they are priced at a higher threshold value. Again, on the last day of the flight, you might see that the prices suddenly drop because the ticket is not booked, and it might make sense for the airline to actually sell it off at a reasonable price rather than letting that seat go vacant. Right? So we use a lot of prescriptive analytics over here. Again, for an aircraft, looking at the sensor data, how do you actually optimize the fuel consumption of the whole aircraft? That is also one thing which comes under prescriptive analytics. There could be a lot of things like, say for example, there could be a sensor which is measuring the external temperature, it's measuring the internal temperature, right? And there's fuel required to keep the aircraft at a specific temperature. Do I use the external climate to somewhere moderate the temperature inside? Yes, if I would have access to all this data and algorithm would have controlled all these things at the runtime, I wouldn't be cooling the internal chamber unnecessarily, but I could have used the external side also. How would I use predictive analytics in a retail store? Right? So it could happen in the form of recommendation, it could happen in the form of some coupons given to some specific customers based on their historic transaction pattern. And then maybe if a customer is not buying a specific thing, you might give him a coupon so that he starts trying some other products. Right? So that would come under the ambit of predictive analytics. Descriptive analytics, as we can see over here, would be more as an insight into the past, where you can just look at how have things been selling, or how has the adaptation of a particular advertisement channel been happening, right? So when you talk about genres and say media, people are going for comedy, people are going for horror, whatever kind of things, right? So you can see the interest aspect of general audience in a specific thing, right? That would typically be covered in descriptive analytics. Going to the next slide, wherein we are talking about digital analytics trends. and this is more so with relevance to 2016. So in the first part, we're talking of integrated and smart everyday gadgets. So how would a analytics solution solve a problem for a US healthcare services? Now see, if you go into US, you would obviously see that healthcare primarily is covered by the state itself. Right? So obviously, if a customer, a customer over here means a citizen, ignores a specific thing like maybe a sudden increase in the blood pressure, obviously there would be a 911 call, and then the person would have been either airlifted or something like that in an emergency situation, and the state has to sponsor, right? So it comes, the insurance comes under the ambit of the state. Now, if there was a gadget which is attached, which is basically like a watch, a smartwatch, which is tied to your wrist, and it relays this data of your heartbeat, your body temperature, and certain other parameters to a data center, and then there is an algorithm which is running over there, which could be predictive in nature and somewhere prescriptive also, and prescribes to the patient at real time by sending a warning SMS stating that you need to go to your nearest healthcare center on priority. If this message was relayed, probably we won't have to airlift that person. We won't have to go into an emergency operative situation. That's how integrated gadgets along with analytics can help us. The second tab talks about getting personal with mobile. Right? So today, based on your usage pattern, based on whatever searches you're doing, your mobile might start prompting you with some campaigns related to sales, related to marketing, related to something which has to do with an upgrade of your phone and all sort of things. So even if you go on the Google Store and download an open source Android application, it would again give you some recommended things, right? That's where you're getting personal with your mobile phones. If you see that you are traveling a specific location in Bangalore, and you have a certain app which starts recommending you the hotels, it starts recommending you the restaurants, the bars, the pubs, and all those things based on how you have been traveling, what is your regular pattern, right? All those things are embedded today. When you talk about digital disruption in retail, so today, specifically with respect to the demonetization, so maybe I would prefer buying something from grocers or some online grocery store. So this is the disruption which is happening in the online retail, like the digital disruption. So people are going for payment gateways. You have platforms which support like Paytm and all these guys who are basically nothing but trying to convert you into a platform where you don't need to rely on cash. Right? And obviously, basis your usage, there will be a lot of upsell and cross-sell of different kinds of products on the same platform. When it comes to virtual reality, right, which is a trend which is coming off, so it's about, can I have a three-dimensional virtual reality simulation wherein obviously I can teach maybe a cricketer how to play or place a ball which is coming from a bowler he has not really faced in reality. Right? It could be about telling, or it could be about giving simulation to a anti-terrorist squad as to how they should handle a situation in a different kind of terrain or a situation. Maybe it's an urban populated area where you have lots of buildings, glass facades, and how would this be done? Ideally, you would have to create this scenario, but today with virtual reality, this is something which is possible. Now we have already spoken about the integrated smart devices which comes in the wearables in workplace, and that's how the digital analytics trend is taking shape. Now we are on the careers in analytics slide, where we specifically talk about the careers aspect. So talking about the demand, so now these are some numbers which have been crunched, right? And it's giving you what's happening in the domestic market, the generic analytics market, and the job openings. So, Jan 2014 actual figures quoted at 163 million, and these are quoted in dollars. Although the market is domestic, figures are quoted in international currency. And projected for 2018, it's roughly around 375 million. That's what we can see. Uh, you can see almost everywhere we are growing by double of what we could see in the previous 2014 scenario. Job openings 31,500 and projected is roughly 2.5 lakhs in 2018, which is humongous. Job numbers have grown not by double, but they have grown exponentially. These are figures which are expected to happen as per the NASCOM analysis. Basic experience, the salary trend has been shown. Say for a typical 0 to 4 years experience, it could be 4.5 lakhs, and for a 10 years experience, it could be 15 lakhs. Now, these are average numbers, right? Realistically speaking, what I've seen in the industry is that a 10 years experience guy, say in a company like Reliance Industries, would be getting a package of 90 lakhs also. And there could also be a possibility that a 0 years experience might have to start with an internship, which is not paid at all. But yes, as your experience grows, right, your salary will grow exponentially if you're good for the industry. That's how it works. Now, some new analytics job by the industry. So this is a segregation basis the domain. Right? So there are these analytical services basis the domain, whether it's US, India, China markets. You see a segregation as to how it is happening. So analytical services would be typically where the client shares data with you and you do some analytical ad hoc models and give the results. And basically it would be consulting. Then typically when we talk about this pharma, insurance, banking, oil and gas and communication technology, this is very specific to the OEM, that is in manufacturing you say this is the original equipment manufacturer or the original service provider. Right? So you can see some trends, right? So the colors which are highlighted in gray, right, typically talks about the depth. So in India, you can see a lot of analytical services taking traction. That's more so often because we are in that phase when we have outsourced contracts from other markets. In pharma, you can see a big presence in the Chinese market, the Brazilian, Japanese market. In insurance, it's typically more so in US and in UK because that's where it is predominantly used. In India, on the insurance side, because typically you use insurance as investment, right? Typically don't use them as a hedge against some uncertain events. And banking has been a domain wherein it is quite stabilized because these are the areas in data wherein every new thing is tried out. So the growth is moderated over here. And communication, obviously, you can see is the lowest over here. And you can also see some numbers. The total number of jobs obviously is very high in US and in India, and followed by China. So in terms of your educational background as to for whom this is optimized, obviously you will see that most of the things are repeated to most of the target audience over here. Essentially, you can take this as the bare threshold. Realistically speaking, analytics is for those people who have the fire under their belly. If they are ready to jump onto it, give their whole soul to it, they can adapt. Typically, it makes sense for a person with some coding background to jump onto this bandwagon because obviously analytics doesn't happen always through a graphical user interface. There's a lot of things which comes from coding aspect also. It can be Python, R, SAS, anything like that. And so it makes more sense if you have a good background in that. If you have exposure to statistics, it certainly helps you a little bit more. So if you are in reporting, then obviously what would be seen as a prerequisite would be exposure to data management, exploration, MIS, and report creation. The target audience would be typically BCom, BA, and BTech. If you are from non-predictive analytics background, the key features which a person would be looking, so you might be from business background, so you are maybe a manager in maybe the creative team in say some advertisement agency like Mudra. In that case, typically what key features would be required is background segmentation, profiling, portfolio analysis, trend and forecasting. Target audience who could do these kinds of things using some tool in analytics would be BCom, BTech, Bs and MBAs. If it's predictive analytics, then obviously you need a strong background in statistics, and you have target audience at the same existing set plus MCAs also. You have the BCom guys, which have been discounted over here because you need some background in coding. If it's about machine learning, it's more about engineers, because typically they need to work on machine learning algorithms. A background in statistics helps you a lot to relate with that. Right? And indicative job roles for people from MIS and non-predictive analytics background would be MIS analyst, data analyst, like something like that. And for those who would like to jump into the field of predictive analytics and machine learning, it would be a data scientist profile. So you wouldn't call yourself a data scientist in the beginning. With time and experience, you would be flagged as a data scientist. So the career path, as you can see over here, using a roadmap is to start as an analyst with 0 to 2 years experience, jump on to become a senior analyst, and with around 4 to 6 years of experience, you'll be somewhere in the manager grade, then an AVP grade as you move from 6 to 10 years bracket, AVP position from 10 to 15. If it's a startup, this would be a little bit different, because therein, maybe with a lower threshold of experience, also you might be a vice president of a product or service. It's visible. And 15 plus years of experience, you would certainly be graded as a director. These are some average salaries shown over here, but I would say this is average, and when you talk about analytics, we usually say that averages are not always right. Okay? So you have to look at the distribution of data. So an AVP of this one would be getting the salary higher than this also. That's how you would see. So this is a slide where we are talking about, do we need some more things to be added to convince you that this is the right thing for you? Certainly that's a decision which you have to take. You can see the gap which is there in supply and the demand. Right? So obviously there's a lot to happen over here. Right? We obviously, so as an entrepreneur, I myself look at a lot of resources through a lot of educational institutes, so that I can fill the funnel, because there's a lot of requirement for projects. When you need a Python developer, you need an R developer, certain places you need a SAS developer. So there's a lot of traction, and obviously that should help you to take a decision. And employment landscape in India, so we are talking about large IT companies, some analytical KPOs, and some companies which do in-house analytics, and some niche firms which cater to analytics. Not that those firms who are doing niche analytics consulting are earning everything through analytics. There are a lot of BI part also. So these are some few companies. So to talk about Infosys, Wipro, TCS, I would say Wipro is very matured when we talk about analytics as a product. Infosys is more so from analytics as a service. From the consulting side, I can say Accenture would be one such company. Genpact is also one. From companies which actually use in-house analytics, HDFC obviously has a risk team, has a marketing analytics team. Vodafone has an in-house team for analytics. ICICI Direct also has one. Fractal Analytics, New Sigma are core companies based in Bangalore and Bombay, which deal with analytics. Specifically, New Sigma has a lot of patent which has filed through employees for algos, and that's how it's working for them. Companies which hire for analytics, you can roughly see all of these, and these are just some lists. There are many companies, including my own company, which is hiring into for different roles in analytics. So let's all talk briefly about some tools in analytics. So primarily when we talk about this, it would be SAS, R, and Python. Now SAS is a proprietary tool. It is sold by a company called as SAS itself. It's an expensive tool. So you have base SAS and you have EG, Enterprise Minor, and different packages which are sold by these guys. So the minimum one of them on an average is around 15 lakhs to 20 lakhs based on how you negotiate with them. That's for the base SAS. And the Enterprise E-Minor could be costing you around say 1 CR per year subscription. Right? And R is open source and Python is also open source. These are basically crowdsourced projects. Of late, what we have seen is that the traction in the market is more for R. So, in fact, Yes Bank, HDFC, all these guys are using R now as a replacement for SAS, because it has a lot of open source modules which is free of cost. Microsoft has also jumped into R with a version called as Microsoft Renoir, right, which primarily was a Revolution Analytics version, and Microsoft has just bought that product. And in terms of Python, you have something like Quantum Analytics, which has a product wherein they provide support for Python. That's also a good tool. So although this slide says that the market leader in analytics is SAS, I would second that by saying that SAS has been replaced in many places by R and Python, right? But no harm in learning all these tools, because at some point in time your client might say that, okay, this module, since it has been developed in SAS, so you have to continue in SAS. There might be a requirement wherein you might have to migrate from SAS to R or Python. And there might be a consulting firm which might work only in pure R or Python. It also depends upon your client. Right? So, like for example, most of the companies, say for example, PNG, right, which used to use fractal analytics as a consulting firm to get its analytics part, now is saying that you can start using R instead of SAS. Right? So those are the changes which are happening in the industry. So if you talk about R, when you look at some survey like the DICE survey done in 2014, these resources are highly paid resource. So typically an R and Python resource would be expensive, because here the tool is not expensive, but the resource is expensive. Right? So 70% of the data miners use R. That's what the 2013 survey says, and now it has gone on to become larger than that pie. And these are the tools which most of the data scientists are exclusively using on KD Nugget survey and all those things. Facebook, Google, John Deere. In fact, John Deere is my client. SN Analytics has John Deere as its client, and we in fact use R for a lot of analytics things for them. So these are the things which are happening in the background. Say even the SQL platform now has a native version of R. Postgre, which is basically a database, also has a distro of R built in natively, so that it can support R. So it can talk to most of the databases, and this pie is increasing obviously. Python, Google uses it a lot, because Google uses a lot of unstructured data and a lot of natural language processing thing, and that is where Python is really strong, and so it is used most often. Obviously, Python and R are basically fighting against each other, but yes, it makes sense to know all the tools. So again, Yahoo, Google, IBM, all these guys are using Python, right? And this is the trend chart which is shown over here. So it's an R versus Python comparison, right? And it's somewhere very neck to neck. So now we come to the online analytical offerings, right? So Tenas will quickly brief you through this, and then I'll take the Q&A post this.
Okay, so quickly about Marcus Learning, we have both classroom and online programs. For our online programs, we have all our programs are either self-paced or they are online. So you have instructor-led and you have self-paced. All of these use our exclusive LMS, and the programs run for over 8 weeks. You can either sit through the live classes, or you can always do the self-paced course, which you can do it at your own pace. The content for the instructor-led is shared on the LMS and on our virtual classroom that are held every weekend. So they are Saturday evenings and Sunday mornings. We also have a unique mentorship program, which is unique to both the online, which is only unique to the online programs at Imaticus. So the mentorship program allows students to interact with senior domain experts. So each student is given individual attention, and they have the opportunity to be with senior domain experts. We also offer career assistance. This is basically just, we help you with resume building, we help you with mock interviews to help you understand what an interview would be like if you do get the opportunity to work at Facebook or an Amazon or an Accenture. So we also give you references of hiring organizations. So we help you with references of those who are looking out for data scientists basically. And so the course basically is ideal for freshers who are looking to start out their career. That's one. And also for those that have experience in other domains, you may be working as an engineer, or you may be working in finance and you want to switch to analytics. So our courses are perfect for you. And all of our online products are sold at 24,000 rupees. So that is all of our online courses that we offer at the moment.
So we can now quickly take the questions, I guess. So these are the online programs. So you have the certification in art program. It's a 40 hour capstone project based course. It's CSP. So you can get in touch with the marketing, right? And they would help you to guide you through this, right? So you have a certification which is dedicatedly for Python. You have a certification which is for data visualization also. One of these programs are run by Untitled, right? And you have these numbers where you can call and you can get in touch with the consumers and all those things. So now let me take the questions. Yeah. So Dinesh can help me in that, and I'm just going to take these questions.
So we have a question from Mohammed. He asks, how is business analytics related to business intelligence?
Okay, that's a very good question. Uh, when you talk about intelligence basically means that can I do a dimensional modeling of my data to represent my data in a good way. Basically, it is reporting, right? So when you talk about business intelligence, it's reporting. Well, if you go back into the theoretical definition of business intelligence as compared to the IT definition, then business intelligence is quoted in the wrong context, because actually business intelligence would mean that do I have uh, a mole planted in my competitor's company which gives me some inputs with respect to some decisions I would take. It comes to from the military, wherein do we have advanced information about something which is going to happen? Right? Obviously, that happens through a network. But here in this case, we can say that business intelligence is just about pure reporting of data using visualization or a grid-based approach. Whereas analytics is basically using the same historic data, but trying to use that data to basically abstract a relationship and use that relationship continuously. So if I say that I have invented gravity by looking at data and then use the same concept at different places throughout the world, and if it is reasonable, then I can say that if something is of this mass, this shape, and this trajectory, it should start from here and it should land up over here. This is that abstraction. So that is what analytics is. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question we have is from Ghulam Khan. He says, I am having 5 years of experience in application development and ETL. Currently working in a small Hadoop project. I want to do data analytics. Could you guide me?
Yeah. Now, as you spoke about ETL, that is extract, transform, and load your data, obviously this is one of the most important aspect of data science job. So typically when you're doing modeling or you're doing analytics, 80% of your time is spent in basically data extraction, cleaning, transforming, and then you start off with the actual model, right? So obviously you're very much on the roll with respect to the direction, right? ETL, when you talk about ETL, so if you're using Hadoop and you're doing ETL and all those stuff, it's basically about automating this job, right? But when you're doing ad hoc processes in the beginning, when you're doing an analytical piece, in the initial stages, you might have to do everything mechanically using codes, and later on, ETL comes into picture. Yes, from the perspective of an upgrading your job, this certainly helps you a lot because you're already working on a lot of data. This should certainly be a good uh, leap of faith for you. Yes.
Okay, so another question we have from from Anji. She asks, as you know, Hadoop is a big ecosystem. So, which tools will better learn in these ecosystem for better careers in Hadoop? She is a Java developer, and what tools are better to learn?
Okay. Since you have some context with Java, right? when you're talking of Hadoop, now again, there has been a transformation in the past 2 years with reference to Hadoop as an ecosystem also. Say, for example, previously, the notion was when we typically talk about some things like in-memory processing, and we were limited with the scale of memory, right? Because the cost of memory increases exponentially, right, as we go in the higher order. And that's why we said that can we distribute the data on a cluster and use the hard disk computation rather than relying on the in-memory process. And we came out with this context from this Hadoop. And there are different daemons and different ecosystems. If your Java is good, there are certain typical cases wherein maybe working on an HDFS would be the best option for you. But certainly today you have Hive with Hadoop 2.0. You have Yarn as a module, right? Yet another resource negotiator, wherein basically writing a MapReduce program might not make sense right now because you already have the Hive QL context, which essentially makes it very easy. So yes, I would say that typically today, using the Hive, Spark also is a good module because when it comes to machine learning, Spark gives you a lot of flexibility with respect to the Spark machine learning library, that is the MATLAB library, right? And that certainly helps you. So these basic modules should be reasonably good for you to jump into first. As you go ahead in your career, you might have to adapt to others also. So there might be a company which is working on multiple technologies, and maybe pig scripting might come handy. And if you're thinking of Spark, maybe a little bit of Scala also might help you because that would be the basic to start off for Spark. Right? I guess that should help you understand a little bit about this and take a direction accordingly.
Okay, so the next question we have from Pratyusha is how do you move from being an IT software engineer to being a data analyst?
Okay. Now, my first thing is the reference of data analyst, right, itself is very vague because there are some companies, say for example, if you go to Reliance, right, and you have a job called as data analyst, over there data analyst might mean only firing an SQL query on a data mart and extracting the data and giving it to a business. Somewhere else in JP Morgan, maybe a data analyst has a different meaning, right? So always look at the job description of the job rather than just relying on the tag. Secondly, with respect to your progression from somebody who's doing maybe a development job to moving into an actual data science job, that's where I would say it's clearly defined. You have to spend a considerable amount of time learning data science. Obviously, you are never going to be away from coding. Coding will be an inherent part of data science. So even today, I do a lot of coding because that is required, right? And that's an inherent part of data science, right? So I guess that should help you clarify. So there are certain companies like ENY, for example, say Deloitte, wherein there is a demarcation between, say, the business analyst team and the data science team. So the business analyst team creates requirement document for analytics, and the data science team, a very coding team, just works on the code generation to cater to the same requirement. So there could be different structures in different companies, right? So I guess that should help you take a direction.
Okay, so another question we have from Dr. Ramana is what will be the future of R and Python in data science applications instead of deep learning?
Uh, what would be
Future of R and Python in data science.
instead of deep learning?
Yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't say deep learning and R or Python can be separated, right? Because factually speaking, what is deep learning? Deep learning is nothing but if you go further deep with reference to, say, the very basic module is the perceptron model, the single layer. If you add more layer, that becomes the multi-layer perceptron model. So we are typically talking about artificial neural network models over here, and if you keep on making the network very complex with a lot of neurons added, right? And somewhere with respect to typical cases, like for example in stock market, where you need some short-term memory, so you might talk about something like an LSTM model, long short-term memory, right? And when it comes to image processing, we might be talking about something like a convention model, right? So depending upon that, if you make the infrastructure a bit more deeper and just not rely on some very basic modules in R or Python, and you go for some complex things, which is possible using something like TensorFlow or tensors, or basically if you talk about Keras as a module itself in Python, this would be something. So obviously this is not separated from R or Python. So deep learning is something which can be done using R and Python. And to make it more expressive, it would be good if you do it in a cluster, right? So R and Python are the tools for deep learning specific. That's what you can see.
So another question we have is by Madhushruti is, do organizations consider experience gained from training institutes? For instance, she has a background of web programming and DB programming, but also has been learning R and Tableau for a year now. But the experience she has gained in analytics is not corporate experience. Do companies consider the offline experience in with data analytics?
See, typically the problem which any candidate faces is that you do a course in Hadoop ecosystem, a big data problem, but still you're using your desktop. You're using a laptop, which is typically a 4 GB RAM, a 1.8 gigahertz processor, maximum 16 GB RAM, right? And how many processors? Say four, right? Uh, but you are working on a single node cluster, right? So what organization feels is that you are not ready for the challenges which might come in a real life situation where you're talking about a lot of complex hardware, software integration, the setup, the configuration, and all those things, and also the support. And that's why they expect you to have an experience of doing a particular case. So there are some open source platforms also. You can use AWS as a platform. You can use Google, which offers you $250 credit in the first time you enroll, which you can consume. And basically, you can do a lot of R&D over there, and you can represent this as a project in your CV also, right? So the industry also very well articulates this problem that did the chicken come first or the egg came first, right? So that is the problem, right? But since there's a lot of demand, so somewhere organizations discount this. You just have to keep on hitting them. One organization will, which will say that okay, even if your experience is not relevant, they might take you. But if they are making an exception, you should also be ready to make an exception of taking a pay cut, or maybe do a 2 month internship with them so that they can get that, uh, what you can say, they get the benefit of doubt to evaluate you in that 2 months, and then they should be ready to take you on payroll at a good package. But if you are expecting them to give you a discount for experience, you should be ready to give them a discount for the pay package also. Yeah.
So another question we have from Pramod is, he's a .NET web application developer with 5 years of experience. Is it good to move to analytics now?
Okay, the first thing is your business experience, whichever domain you're working, certainly helps you in analytics. Your IT skill set also helps you certainly to get onto this bandwagon. But you should be ready to you should be ready to discount the salary. Say, for example, if you have been heading the sales of say IBM and you are getting a package of say 75 lakhs, today if you think one fine day you want to get into analytics, right? Certainly, whosoever is going to hire you will not be able to give you the pay package what you were getting, because for them, although you have say 15, 25 years experience in sales, in analytics you are wrong, right? So your salary will be decided basis your current experience. Your past experience will help you get an edge over others. But yes, if you're ready to take that discount, if you're ready to do whatever it takes to become an analytics expert, you should jump on.
Okay, so we're still taking a few more questions, so do send us your question. A question from Suresh is, what level of statistics knowledge is required for someone from IT to become a data scientist? Where would it be best to switch?
Okay, Suresh, if I tell you my background, I have a BSc in statistics where I've studied hypothesis test as one of the subjects in statistics for almost a year. But even today, with a 20 years experience, basically into consulting, analytics, having our own firm, giving solutions to company, being into training, I train at SPJ and all these places also. What I feel is that when I started, I felt that I have 60% knowledge. Today, I feel I know only 1% of this. Right? But that's a learning curve. So as you learn more, you will feel that you know less. But even that less would suffice for the industry. Right? And knowledge as such is never complete. We should always be empty, and that is where we learn. The day we feel that we are full, we stop learning. Right? So you can learn statistics. We have all taken some course. So even if you do a BCom course, you have one subject of statistics. You do an engineering course, also you have one subject of statistics. If you just refresh that a little bit and then start learning more through our courses, right, you should certainly be well placed. Obviously, you won't be called a data scientist immediately. See, one thing is for sure, the lion doesn't move with a fly card on his chest saying that I am the lion, right? The other animals actually react, and that is where we start understanding, yes, he is the king of the jungle. Right? So that will come with time and experience. Right? You wouldn't be called a data scientist immediately. It will take some time. Okay? I assume I have answered that question, of course.
Okay, so we're still waiting for questions, but okay, so we have two more questions that we'll do. The first, a question from Ghulam Khan again is considering Middle East, which will be the better choice, big data or analytics from a job perspective?
If you are considering Middle East, analytics would be a better pick rather than big data. Now, the Middle East market works in this way. They typically buy everything out, right? So the big data platform can be bought, but certainly people who have analytics background and that too to work on a big data platform is a rare thing to find, right? So 1,000 people you might find only 5 resources. So obviously going for analytics on a distributed platform certainly goes for a better choice rather than going for a big data. But today I don't think so. Big data and analytics is separated. Uh, they are kind of siblings who are working together. Okay.
Okay, so the final question for this webinar would be, do R and Tableau go hand in hand in most of the organizations of visualization? R for building models and data.
Okay. See the Madhushruti, R does analytics. The output of the same might be taken. So let me talk about a simple case right now. Okay. With reference to open source Tableau, you don't have it integrated. But if you go for the paid version, which organizations typically buy today, you have a lot of analytics coming in Tableau also. Now, if you talk about what typically happens is that the analytical part is done in R. So, for example, there is a bank, say HDFC for instance, they might run a credit risk model and they might use the spatial data to tag the customer on a map using Tableau then and put these scores on the map of say Bombay, and they might see that in certain places there's a lot of default which you can represent with a dark shade of red, and the green or the blue shade might be representing that the payments are coming back on time, which incidentally is visualized using Tableau to show to the seniors in the company, somebody who's not from analytics, to maybe the boardroom, to depict that this is how things are going. Right? So obviously, R itself is a very powerful tool when it comes to graphics. But in many places, Tableau is used in conjunction with R to represent the output of your analytics, and they do gel very well.
Okay, so before we end or before we get to more questions that you may have, you can still send in your questions. We'll launch a quick poll. So the first poll we would like to know is, what technology would you like to see? So would you like to see, would you like to learn R, Python, big data or Hadoop, data visualization or SAS? So, Ematicus Learning is a leading institute in analytics where we have received an award for our online training as well, and we do offer these courses. So, which of these would you like to learn about? We're just going to wait for a couple of more people to vote in. Right now, we don't have all of the attendees who have voted. So. we're still waiting for a few more people to vote. So if you could cast your vote into so that we understand what kind of technology is popular amongst your group and what really you would like to learn as and what you see as the most like the most desirable course that you would like to learn about. Okay, so we're going to close the poll for this one right now. So so we have another question while we're still waiting for questions to come in. Is that are you are you interested in joining a paid analytics certification, or would you like to learn about the different analytics certification, like the ones that were previously mentioned before? So by answering this poll, you'll help you get the right job, get the right field, and we'll definitely help you make the switch into data analytics and the whole analytics spectrum. So we're just gonna wait for a few more people to vote. So do cast in your vote because we'd really like to help you out with this. Okay, so thank you for voting for this. And a final poll that we would share is, would you recommend attending this webinar to others? 1 least likely and 5 most likely. So again, we're just waiting for a few more people to vote in, and then we. So we close the poll, and we'll take a final question before we can end the webinar. So Dr. Ramana asks, can we integrate R and Python in data science application project? And do you have any case study where you can use both R and Python?
Okay. So, for example, there could be a situation, say, for example, with respect to integration, the flexibility of the tools. So you can have an R notebook where you can embed a Python script so that both of them work simultaneously. Now, say for example, Python has a very good adaptation for natural language processing. So that's part of the NLP package, right? That's a natural language toolkit. So obviously we can use the codes of that world and the codes of this world, right? So maybe the basic data processing might be done in R. The natural language parsing might be done in Python. Then again, you might want to use, from a package perspective, there are very good packages in R which might not be present in Python. So again, you might switch back to R for modeling part, right? Say for example, if you want again do a validation model which is used, say for example in deep learning, right? Or say you want to do an ANN model, then from the processing perspective, since R can use only a single core processor, whereas Python can use all the processors in your machine, you might again want to switch back to a Python script. So we typically use R and Python as two siblings together working to solve our business case. Okay? And we certainly have done these kind of application in the real world, wherein we have done something on machine analytics, right? And that's where it is used as of now with our client.
Okay, so thank you so much for attending. So if you have any questions, any inquiries, you can write into e.learning@naukri.com and we will get back to you with that.
Okay?
So
So thank you all for your time and your patience, and I'll be signing off.